Hi and welcome back to a new video. I already asked you about this like a year ago, or I mentioned that I was planning to build my own NAS system, but I never made it that far. Simply didn't have the time, and then meanwhile I received this awesome care package from Synology. On bottom we have a NAS itself, so it's a DS1621xs Plus. Very curious to unpack that one. And on top we have a 10G network card, which we also have to mount into the NAS to be able to use 10G LAN. And I also bought those 6 SSDs. Very fortunate that I bought those before all this Chia drama. I acquired them about 2 months ago at a very decent price, I would say. So I paid about 450 euro for them. Right now they cost like 650, 750 euro. So the price of these really increased. It's about 4 terabyte per disk. Those are Micron 5300 SSDs, SATA drives, and they have a very high write rate. TBW of about 8,400 terabytes, so they should last a very long time for my use. I estimate at least 5 to 6 years.
Seasonic, the heart of your system.
So this one is a 6-bay NAS, DS1621xs Plus, which should be exactly for what I need. We have a 4-core CPU inside, should be an Intel Xeon. You can mount M.2 drives. They're like additional M.2 spaces. It supports 10G LAN, and we have up to 6 bays, which is exactly what I need SATA-wise, or SSD-wise. You can also use 6 HDD caches if you want to. Okay, so those are accessories, network cables, power supply, well, power cord, some screws. That's actually much smaller than I expected. So 6 drive bays in front, power button, LAN ports on the back, eSATA, not sure if I will ever need that, USB, power connection, fans. Let's check it out inside. Right on bottom we have this small cover right here. There should be the memory underneath, so if you ever want to upgrade your memory capacity, it should be very easy to access it. So there's indeed one 8GB memory module, and I also straight spotted some thermal pads which seem to make contact with the case. So apparently they're using the case to dissipate some of the heat. So I'm just removing all those drive bay cages so we can get a better impression from the internals. Right in the back we have this PCB, which contains the SATA connection either for your HDDs or SSDs. And on the left there are indeed 2 M.2 mounting ports. So for now I just removed the cover to see how this thing is actually built. Very curious, especially to see the main board. This is a pretty standard, well, not standard sized, but standard output ATX PSU. Outputs 12 volt, 5 volt, 3.3 volt. We have a normal 24-pin connector. This looks like an 8-pin EPS connector. Let's see if we can access the main board somehow. Okay, so I moved from my living room to my office. Much easier to work here. As you can see, I completely already disassembled the backside. And the backside, this like entire metal cover, was connected over some thermal pads to this part right here. We'll be curious to see what's on the other side, like what heat source is actually sitting behind this. It was very simple to unmount the PSU. It was just attached with like 3 screws, like here on top and there. Then simply plug off the ATX connector. This one seems to be not standard. So it's not a standard PSU. I mean, it's also not a standard size PSU, but it's made from Delta Electronics, which is good. And there we already have the mainboard. It was very simple. I think the entire process of disassembling this thing didn't even take 15 minutes. It was very simple, very straightforward. Nothing had to be destroyed. So repairing those would be absolutely straightforward, perfect. And yeah, the only thing which was glued was this small part right here, but it was not glued in a bad way. It's just so it probably doesn't wiggle around. But yeah. Here we probably have the CPU sitting underneath. I just had to take the board out from this expansion card right here, which should be for the SSDs, HDDs. And then on the side, this is an adapter card for the 2 M.2 drives. This is for the front panel. M.2 was sitting here, front panel here. In the end, such a NAS system is nothing else than a tiny computer. That's why we also have a BIOS battery sitting right here. Actually, it would be perfect if this one was also sitting on the front next to the memory module, so you could also swap that one if it was empty. But I mean, it's very simple, straightforward to disassemble this one, so that's not that much of a big deal. But yeah, that would just be the last tiny part to make it perfect. Underneath this cover right here, this tiny passive cooler, we have a 10G network chip, which is connecting this port right here. Now I'm trying to remove the bigger heatsink for the CPU, but that is sitting on Very firm, very, very firm. Underneath the heatsink, we can find a Xeon D1621xs, which is a 4-core 8-thread Xeon CPU, Broadwell E-based, which means it's from the area of the 6950X. It's from about 2015, supports up to 128 GB of memory, has 24 PCI Express lanes directly from the CPU, which makes it a good CPU for such a use case, 35 watts. So it's not the highest performance CPU anymore these days, but for NAS you don't need that much power, so that should be absolutely fine. Also, could be that they're configuring the CPU at even lower power consumption, because this heatsink is not the biggest, even though it's making actually contact with the thermal pad to the entire case, so it can dissipate much more heat than you would probably assume. Just ask myself the question, what would happen if I would plug a GPU in here and then M.2 with Windows in one of those M.2 slots, and because that should be the Synology software, I assume. This looks like MLC, TLC, whatever, NAND, like a NAND flash. So this probably contains the Synology software. By the way, this aluminum piece is making contact with the backside of the case, and this way they're utilizing this, the additional surface area of the case for additional cooling of the CPU, because that's sitting directly behind the Intel CPU. Yeah, don't ask. Okay, so standby power already works. Now I just have to find the right pin for the front panel to switch it on. What a stupid idea. Okay, so that worked. At least I'm getting into some kind of Linux-based, whatever, bootloader thing. Nothing is happening from that point, but yeah, not too bad. Can use that as almost as a PC. Maybe I have to remove that part. Yeah, I think the NAS video just escalated. Oops. So I removed this part, and now I'm stuck in some kind of UEFI shell. But the thing is, I cannot get my keyboard to be detected over USB, so cannot really use anything. Yeah, not sure how we just ended up in this configuration. Only took about 10 minutes and it's completely assembled again. Very simple, very straightforward. And as this thing is already opened in this moment, I'm also going to add my expansion card, which will offer 2 additional 10G network ports. And that's actually what this port is for, not for plugging in graphics card. Didn't really make much sense for NAS, but you can use this one to have more network ports, like with this card. Something I want to add to the thing where we just assembled everything in a wild manner. You can actually run Windows on those disk stations using the Synology Virtual Machine Manager. You can use that software tool, which is directly from Synology, to run different virtual machines like Linux-based or Windows-based if you ever need that. Meanwhile, I attached all the SSDs to those mounting cages, and using SSDs will also save power, which means it will be less warm and it also will be much lighter, and at the same time it will be completely silent, which is something I'm looking forward to. So I hope I can actually leave this thing inside my room. I just hope that those fans are not too loud, otherwise I will have to put it just in a different room, like a storage room, and then yeah, we'll see. We'll start setting up this thing. All right, let's see how this thing will work. Attach it to power and also network. Let's go. Okay, so first of all I thought this is like a jet, but now I cannot hear anything anymore. That's awesome, that's great. So the only thing I had to do first was enter findsynology.com in the web browser, and it instantly found the NAS. Now we're going to connect and set it up. First step, installing Disk Station Manager. While the disk station keeps setting up itself, we're quickly talking about the RAID type I decided to use. Originally I wanted to go for RAID 5, but RAID 5 has the big disadvantage that you're pretty much evenly using all the drives. And in case one drive fails, which is okay because with RAID 5 you can have one drive failing, you can plug a new one, and then in theory you can recreate your data over the parity and the remaining data to recreate your broken drive. But this process is very write and read intensive, and it's quite likely that at this part or at this moment during this process another drive might fail. And using RAID F1, which seems to be like an intelligent version of RAID 5 and it's kind of exclusive to Synology, RAID F1 utilizes one disk much more than the rest. And this way you know that this specific disk will fail first, which is quite nice because then you can simply replace this one, and at the state when it's reassembling the data on that drive, the others will not fail. The first thing I checked, I know it's all in German, even though you can still read that this is 10G LAN. That is great. In the disk manager, you can view the HDDs, SSDs. Right here, I can see my 6 drives. All the SSDs are initialized correctly. Now, bottom right in the resource monitor, I can check that CPU is pretty much not utilized right now, which makes sense. I mean, the NAS is not doing anything. Also LAN and memory. This way you can probably estimate if you ever need memory upgrade. So after setting up the RAID, I'm now waiting for this to do some kind of data check with the consistency of the parity, which is now at 1.4%. Then I added a volume right here, but everything was very straightforward and simple. I don't know, it took like 5 minutes to set up everything. I'm now waiting for this to pass the check and then I can hopefully use it. Alright, so the NAS is set up and the speed is also quite impressive. I just started copying some of my video files from my existing PC because right now I'm occupying about 7 to 8 terabyte of space just for my video files. And the plan for the future is that I'm going to put all the raw video data on the NAS and then it's automatically syncing with Mary's PC so she can automatically download the files. And then, for example, I don't know, I'm uploading a video like 3 a.m. and she will go to her PC in the morning like 8 a.m. and then she can immediately start with video editing because it's automatically syncing. That's something we didn't have before because we were simply working over Google Drive, which was not that great to be honest, because we always had to like sync individual folders and then she had to download those files manually. And for some reason also Google syncing is not that great because it's always just uploading one file with 2 megabytes per second. I don't know why it's doing that, but the Synology drive works much smoother and faster for us, so we decided to go with this solution, much better for us. Also, I started copying my first video files and it was copying with about 700 to 800 megabytes per second, which is a result of 10G LAN and also the fast SSDs we're using. But that's write speed, so read speed should be even higher. And in theory, I should be able to start video editing over the NAS itself. So I don't have to even copy my files from the NAS to my PC. I can immediately start working with the files from the NAS to my computer. So I'm very happy with that. Yeah, Synology wanted me to point out that the drives I'm using are not on the compatibility list with their testing, but it still worked. So you're not limited to their compatibility list, but they recommend to do so. All right. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye-bye.